Hello everyone, we are going to create a Godot plugin with no actual interface. It will only have some settings in editor settings like this, and that's all. No docs, no main screens, nothing. And for this, first we need to have a project, a new project, and we are going to go to project settings and click this create new plugin button under plugins tab. In this window, you can type the name of your plugin. So I will say Hydrate 2, and the subfolder will be created automatically. The script will be created automatically. You can write your name here. It will be shown here, and you can type the version if you want and a description. So when you, let's say this, when you click create, a new script file will be created and a folder for your plugin will be created. And all the information you typed is here in plugin CFG file, like this. Actually, we're not going to use this plugin, this newly created plugin. I will show you the process with the plugin I have already created. So I will close this, discard. Okay, now the Hydrate plugin is a very simple plugin. It has a timer, and when the time's up, it shows a pop-up or plays a sound, and I can demonstrate it. For example, if I go here and in interval already 1, if I activate this plugin, and if we wait exactly 1 minute, a small pop-up appeared and the sound was played. So how to do this? First of all, the very important thing is you need to have this add tool at the top of your plugin script, and it should extend the editor plugin. Right now, since the settings of this plugin will be in editor settings in here, because we don't have any other UI, we will need an editor settings variable, and we may need to save our configuration to a config file. So we will need I need to disable this. So we will need a configuration file variable. We will need a timer. We will need a pop-up, and it will be an accept dialog node. We will need the audio stream player and the configurations here. The name of the configuration file will be hydrate settings.cfg, and we will need a pop-up and a sound. I have a sound here. It's a simple sound like this. And I created a very simple pop-up scene. And the root node is an accept dialog, and it has a very simple vertical box container and a label and a checkbox. That's all. And it has a very simple script. It is just forwarding the signal, and the signal is this checkbox, because the pop-ups can be annoying and the user may want to disable just on the pop-up. So I have a checkbox here, and I am forwarding the signal like this. So in the hydrate script, we have some default settings. The settings are active, the default is true, interval is 120, whatever you want, enable pop-up, enable sound. And these namings are like this, and normally I will use something like this, but I'm using this kind of naming because everything you type here will be shown here as it is. For example, this the name of the variable is debug key store user. The name of the variable is one click deploy clear previous install. So whatever you type as the variable name will show up like this. So we have some default settings, and we have a current settings, which is an empty object right now, and we have setting informations. These setting informations will have this special kind of structure, because if you go to the Godot documentation, to editor settings, and go to the bottom all the way down right here, we will use this method, and this method needs this structure. It will have a name, it will have a type, it is optionally have a hint and a hint string. And these hint strings also are very special. You can use this link and see all the ways to define this special string. Now our active setting will be a boolean. The interval will be an integer and it will accept a range. The lower end of the range will be 1. The upper end of the range will be 180. The step size will be 1. And if the user wants to type a number larger than 180, it will allow with this special string. The enable pop-up will be a boolean and the enable sound will be a boolean. So we can start with the enter tree function. Enter tree function runs when the plugin is enabled or the engine is started if the plugin is already enabled. In this enter tree function, this is the whole function. In this enter tree function, first we are getting the interface from getEditorInterface function. This is a special function and you can do this in editor plugin scripts, but right now we are using 4.1. If you are using 4.2 or a higher version, you will be able to use editor interface directly. So you may want to read this part. So we will need the editor interface and we will get the editor settings from the interface.getEditorSettings. And to save and load from a configuration file, we will have a configuration object. When the plugin is first loaded, when it first enters the tree, it should check if there is a saved configuration. So here we are doing that. The file loading status is configuration.load the configuration file path, and the configuration file path is this path we described here. And notice that it says user here. It is not a resource. It should be in the user data folder. If you want to see where this folder is, you can just click on project and open user data folder. So it will open the folder. I already have a CFG file, but it won't matter because we will create one if there is not any. So we are getting the file, and if the file loading status is okay, for every setting in our default settings, remember that default settings is this: active, interval, enable pop-up, enable sound. So for every setting in our default settings, if the configuration has a section key under the general section with the setting key, which means if there's an active, interval, enable pop-up, or enable sound under general, it should set that setting of the current settings to the setting saved in the configuration file. This is not a special string. You can write anything you want here, but you need to have some kind of section here, so I'm just using the general word here. So if the configuration has the setting, we are writing that setting into current settings, but if it doesn't have that setting, we are setting the configuration file by using the default settings. And we are setting the current setting using the default setting. So this part is if we have the configuration file. If we don't have the configuration file, for every setting in default settings again, we are setting the configuration file using the default settings. And again, we are setting the current settings using the default settings. After this part is finished, for every setting in current settings, right now we have the current settings properly set up. For every setting in current settings, editor settings set hydrate / the key of the setting and set it to the current setting. After that, again in the editor settings, add the property info of that setting by using the setting informations. And after everything is finished, we are just saving the configuration file. After this part is done, we need to connect the settings changed signal of the editor settings to a function, and the function we will use is called onSettingsChanged, and it's here. So let's jump to that function. When a setting is changed, we will get the change settings by using this function, editor settings.getChangeSettings. And for every setting in change settings, by the way, the setting in this change settings is in this format, hydrate / the key of the setting. So we are going to split that string by using the / character. And we are in this line, we are just checking things, checking if the change setting is our setting. If the size of the split setting key is not equal to 2, or the first part is not hydrate, or the second part is not in our current settings, we are just continuing the loop. And if it is our setting, if the change setting is our setting, the current setting will be set to the new setting by using the get setting function. And the configuration will be updated like this. And we are again going to save the configuration file. And before going into this part, because this part is actually the logical part of the new setting, before going into this part, let's continue from the enter tree function. So after we connected the signal, we are going to instantiate our pop-up scene. We are going to preload the pop-up path and instantiate it. And we are going to connect the on pop-up setting change signal of our pop-up scene. Let's remember what that was. Our pop-up scene has a signal called on pop-up setting changed, and it's sending and is disabled. Remember, that was the checkbox here, the disable pop-up. So if the user clicks on that checkbox, this signal will be called, and right now we are connecting that signal to a nameless function like this. So this is new in Godot 4. You don't have to create a named function like this for everything. If it is very small, you can create a function like this. A nameless function with an argument called isDisabled. It will set the editor settings enable pop-up to the opposite of the isDisabled. And that's all. We just connected the signal of the pop-up scene. After that, we are going to get the base control of the interface and add our pop-up scene as a child. Now we can create our audio stream player, and we are going to set the stream to our sound. And again, we are going to get the base control of the interface and add our player as a child. After that, we are going to create our timer and set the timeout signal to another function. Let's go to that function now, the onTimeout function. Okay, and it says if the current settings that enable pop-up, which means if the pop-up is enabled, it should activate the pop-up, and if the sound is enabled, it should play the sound. And that's all. It's a very simple function. And after setting the signal, we are again going to get the base control of the interface and add our timer as a child. And remember, we are still in the enter tree function. After doing everything about setting up our plugin, if the setting is active, we will start the timer. Now we can continue with this part. So when the setting is changed, if the change setting is hydrate activate, we are going to check if the setting is true or false. So if it is true, we are going to start the timer, and if it is false, we are going to stop the timer. That's all. If the setting is hydrate interval, we are going to calculate the wait time for the timer, and if the current setting is active, we are going to again start the timer with the new waiting time. If the setting is not active, we are just going to set the wait time of the timer. And we have a default part of this match. This part is for if both enable pop-up and enable sound is disabled, we are going to set the active setting to false. Because let's go to the settings of this plugin. Let's say I activated this plugin, but I disabled pop-up and I also disabled sound. Then it means our plugin won't do anything, so we are just going to deactivating our plugin. And after all this, a very important thing is the exit tree function. In this function, we need to release all the resources we created in enter tree, and we also need to remove the settings from the editor settings. Let me show you the reason. Let's say in here, in enter tree function, we have a print function here, and it will get the interface that get base control that get child count. Now let's open the output, clear everything, and I'm going to disable and enable this plugin. Now it says there are 54 children under the base control of the interface, and I can disable and enable and the number will not change. But if you don't do this, if you don't free our pop-up, our sound player, our timer, every time we enable the plugin, number will change. We are not removing our resources, and it is just adding up. So we shouldn't do this. And the other thing is, right now our plugin is enabled, and we can see that under editor settings, we can see the hydrate settings are here. But if I disable the plugin, and if I go to editor settings, I can find the hydrate settings here, because we are removing all the settings we have created here. If we don't do that, and we enable and disable our plugin, if you go to the editor settings, you will see that our setting is here. But right now our plugin is not working, so these shouldn't be here. That's why we need to clear our settings and clear our resources. And that's all. We just created our plugin without any UI in the editor, just the settings. And if you need the code, you can find the GitHub link in the descriptions.